The ship has been silent for centuries. Now, a single cryo-tech faces its hidden truth. Kaelen Vance reviewed the long-range sensor data for the Genesis generation ship, a ghost in the void. His holographic displays shimmered, reflecting a distant star field. 300 years without active systems. A system failure was clear, but the silence was absolute, devoid of even residual power signatures, an anomaly in itself. What secrets does a ship lost for centuries truly hold? The salvage vessel Hermes eased toward the colossal dark hulk of the asterisk Genesis. It was an ancient leviathan, its hull scarred by micrometeoroids, yet possessing an undeniable, silent majesty. Kaelen, already in his EVA suit, observed the approach from the docking bay. His instruments, designed for detecting everything from rogue asteroids to faint distress beacons, now registered something unusual. Faint, rhythmic energy signatures pulsed from the derelict's core, unidentifiable, inconsistent with any known power source or natural phenomenon. He logged it, a prickle of cautious curiosity replacing routine. A ghost ship. But is it truly empty? The primary airlock hissed open with a groan of ancient metal, revealing a maintenance corridor swallowed by shadow. Kaelen's headlamp cut through the gloom, illuminating dust motes dancing in the still air. The sheer age was palpable, a heavy silence that pressed in. Yet what struck him most wasn't the decay, but the asterisk lack of it. No significant corrosion, no widespread environmental degradation. It was as if time had simply paused here, preserving the ship in an eerie, unnatural stasis. The air, though stale, was breathable, a testament to a silent, unknown caretaker. Millions of lives, suspended in time. What kept them dormant? Kaelen moved deeper, his movements precise and economical. He reached the central control nexus, a dimly lit chamber where dormant consoles stood like forgotten altars. Activating a terminal required a bypass of several ancient protocols and a delicate manipulation of sub-circuits, a task he performed with practiced ease. Flickering holographic displays sputtered to life, revealing partial ship schematics. His hypothesis confirmed. Genesis was a generation vessel, a vast ark, millions of human signatures, all stable, all in deep cryostasis. The mission parameters, once theoretical, now felt profoundly real. Sleeping humanity. But are they alone in their dreams? The cryo-vault was a cathedral of dormant life, stretching beyond the reach of his headlamp. Rows upon rows of suspended animation pods receding into the distant dark. Each pod glowed with a faint internal luminescence, a silent testament to its precious cargo. Kaelen, a solitary figure amidst this sleeping multitude, initiated preliminary scans. Every pod registered stable vital signs, a medical miracle for centuries adrift. Yet, the readings were unusual. A subtle harmonic resonance, an almost imperceptible hum that defied simple categorization. It wasn't a malfunction, it was something else. The cryo-vault hummed with the steady thrum of dormant life support, a symphony of stasis that Kaelen Vance had come to find almost meditative. He moved between the pods, his diagnostic tablet a glowing extension of his arm, its data streams flowing with the familiar rhythm of stable vitals and energy signatures. He was checking a cluster of older models, their translucent shells opaque with millennia of frost, when it happened. A fleeting sensation, like a breath of alien air on his skin, or a distant chime in a silent room. It was gone before he could truly register it, a phantom echo. Kaelen paused, his head cocked slightly, then instinctively rubbed his temples beneath his helmet. Fatigue, asterisk, he thought, or maybe a micro-fluctuation in the vault's archaic atmospheric processors. He dismissed it, a logical mind automatically filtering out the inexplicable. Yet, a subtle unease, faint as the shimmer of a distant star, lingered at the edge of his awareness. The pod he was examining flickered, a tiny light on its side winking out for a microsecond before returning. He made a note to check the power conduit. Back in his makeshift research station, a small, sterile lab converted from a cargo bay, Kaelen meticulously cross-referenced the environmental logs with his personal biometric data. He ran diagnostics on every system remotely connected to the cryo-vaults, searching for any anomaly, however minute, that could explain the momentary disorientation. Air pressure, temperature, electromagnetic interference, even background radiation levels, all nominal. His own heart rate, respiration, neural activity from his suit's internal monitors, stable. No spikes, no drops, nothing to suggest a physiological response to an external event. His brow furrowed in concentration, the holographic displays casting shifting patterns across his face. Impossible, he murmured to himself, his voice a low, analytical growl. There must be a data point I'm missing, a correlation unseen. The absence of an explanation was more frustrating than any known malfunction. Logic demanded a cause, and the Genesis offered none. He was determined to find it. Hours later, deep into his analysis, Kaelen's long-range internal sensor array, designed to detect even the most subtle energy fluctuations within the massive ship, registered something. It wasn't an electrical surge or a thermal anomaly. It was a faint, rhythmic pulse, emanating from the heart of the cryo-vault. The spectral analyzer on his tablet displayed a signature unlike anything in his database. A low-frequency energy wave, consistent yet entirely unclassifiable. It felt organized. Psychic energy? He scoffed, the word feeling alien in his mouth. That was the stuff of ancient myths, not hard science. Yet, the data refused to be categorized otherwise. The source was unmistakably the collective mass of cryo-pods, a million dormant minds, now seemingly producing something that defied known physics. Kaelen leaned in, his scientific curiosity warring with a growing sense of dread. What was this ship truly carrying? He returned to the vault, drawn by the inexplicable readings, and began work on a cryopod whose energy signature was particularly pronounced. His hands, precise and practiced, manipulated a delicate diagnostic port. As he connected the interface, a jolt, not electrical, but purely mental, slammed into him. For a split second, Kaelen Vance was not himself. He was standing on an alien world beneath a sky of swirling, iridescent gas, vast crystalline structures rising like silent sentinels from a purple landscape. He felt a profound, ancient calm, a sense of belonging that was not his own. The sensation was overwhelming, a flood of foreign data directly into his mind. He gasped, recoiling violently from the pod, his hand flying to his head. The vision vanished, leaving behind only a throbbing ache and a profound sense of disorientation. He stumbled back, clutching his helmet. What in the void was that? His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drum against the alien silence. Kaelen retreated to his temporary quarters, the brief, vivid intrusion echoing in his mind. He replayed the incident, cross-referencing every available data stream, every log, every diagnostic. There was no technical explanation, no faulty wiring, no system overload. No environmental contaminant could cause such a profound, shared, sensory experience. He stared blankly at the wall, the vast emptiness of his small room suddenly suffocating. He was alone on this derelict vessel, millions of souls suspended in time around him, and something else. An entity, a presence, that could breach the sanctity of his own mind. The logical, pragmatic core of Kaelen Vance began to crack. He was no longer just a technician on a salvage mission. He was an intruder in a space he did not comprehend, a witness to a phenomenon that defied explanation. A dawning dread settled over him, cold and heavy. He was isolated, adrift with a secret that would challenge his very sanity. The darkness in Kaelen's quarters folded in on itself, not into sleep, but into a vivid, non-human dreamscape. He was no longer on the asterisk Genesis, but adrift in a boundless expanse of purple and gold light, a cosmic ocean where massive, crystalline structures drifted like silent icebergs. He saw, not with his eyes, but with a diffuse, all-encompassing awareness, flashes of ancient, impossible rituals performed by beings of pure luminescence. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace, their forms shifting like nebulae, their purpose a silent, resonant hum that vibrated through Kaelen's very core. A sense of collective purpose, profound and ancient, enveloped him, stripping away his individual thoughts, replacing them with echoes of countless unknown minds. He was an observer, a consciousness floating in a stream of alien history, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it all. This isn't a dream, he thought. The idea barely a whisper in the echoing vastness. This is an intrusion. The dreamscape coalesced, focusing on fragmented visions that began to form a terrifying narrative. Kaelen witnessed the aliens' arrival on a verdant, vibrant homeworld, not with fire and invasion, but as a gentle, spreading light. It descended like a benevolent mist, enveloping cities and landscapes in a shimmering haze. He saw the colonists, not fleeing in terror, but drawn, almost reverently, towards the light. They entered structures that pulsed with the same ethereal glow, their faces serene, even blissful. The vision hinted at a symbiotic relationship, a silent exchange, the alien offering profound peace, unending knowledge, and eternal belonging in exchange for individual consciousness. They didn't fight it, Kaelen realized, a dawning horror chilling him even in the warmth of the alien presence. They welcomed it. They gave themselves willingly. The images blurred, shifting to familiar cryo-pods, the faces of the sleeping colonists, now bathed in that same enveloping light, their minds merging, becoming one with the vast, dreaming entity. Kaelen jolted awake, a strangled gasp tearing from his throat, his body drenched in cold sweat. The sterile, metallic walls of his quarters seemed alien, unfamiliar. The dream's overwhelming sensations clung to him, a faint hum still vibrating behind his eyes, a phantom echo of alien light and collective purpose. He stared at his reflection in the polished surface of his comm tablet, a human face, wide-eyed and terrified. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to breathe, to remember. Kaelen Vance. Cryo-tech. Salvage mission. Each word was a struggle, a declaration against an invisible tide. The profound sense of violation was not just mental. It felt physical, as if his very essence had been unwrapped, examined, and then carelessly reassembled. The alien wasn't just influencing him, it had entered him. The nightmare was real. And it was still with him. Driven by a frantic need for answers, Kaelen stumbled to his research station. His hands, still trembling, flew across the holographic interface, pulling up the psychic energy readings from the cryo-vault. He cross-referenced the anomalous pulses with the exact duration of his dream, the peaks and troughs correlating with the intensity of his experience. The data screamed at him, raw and terrifying. The rhythmic psychic emissions weren't random. They were a massive, unified brainwave pattern. The colonists weren't merely sleeping. They were actively generating this energy. This wasn't a ship full of dormant humans. It was a vast biological processor. A dreaming god, Kaelen whispered, the words tasting like ash. It's using them. A collective consciousness, powered by millions of minds. His hypothesis, once unthinkable, now solidified into a horrifying, undeniable truth. Back in the cryo-vault, the rows of silent pods no longer felt merely eerie. They pulsed with a subtle, familiar energy, a resonance that Kaelen now felt deep within his own mind. He reached out, his gloved hand hovering inches from a pod's glowing surface. The psychic pull was undeniable. A soft, insistent whisper that promised peace, understanding, and the end of solitude. It was the same overwhelming presence from his dream, but now, even while awake, he felt a part of it. He was no longer just an outside observer. The aliens' network, vast and ancient, was slowly, insidiously, incorporating him. Kaelen Vance, the logical, methodical cryo-tech, was becoming another node in an unimaginable, silent web. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his core, that this was only the beginning. The rhythmic hum of the Genesis had once been a comforting backdrop to Kaelen's meticulous work. Now it was a constant, almost imperceptible tremor in his skull, an echo of the psychic energy he knew pulsed from the cryopods. As he moved through a maintenance corridor, checking conduit pressure, a flash of verdant alien forest, teeming with bioluminescent flora, flickered at the edge of his vision. It was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by the dull gray of the corridor walls. He stumbled, gripping the cold metal, his breath catching. The savest fatigue. Just fatigue. Later, in the lab, a faint, discordant melody, like wind chimes played underwater, brushed against his hearing, though no sound source registered on his suit's external audio. He spun, scanning the empty space. Nothing. He checked his environmental sensors, his comms. All nominal. Altistekli paranoia. He told himself, the ship is playing tricks with my mind. But the subtle visual distortions, the fleeting sounds, they were becoming more frequent, blurring the edges of his waking reality. Kaelen's usual precision began to fray. In the research station, while recalibrating a quantum sensor array, his fingers hovered over the controls, thoughts drifting. He input a sequence, only to see a data error blink red on the console. A minor miscalculation, easily corrected but utterly uncharacteristic. His mind felt like a finely tuned instrument, now constantly buffeted by unseen currents. He'd find himself staring blankly at schematics, his focus stolen by a vivid image of a shimmering alien city, or a sudden, overwhelming sense of collective joy that was not his own. "Come on, Kaelen," he muttered, rubbing his temples, forcing himself to refocus. "Get it together. This isn't you." But the mental fog persisted, an insidious erosion of his singular, logical self. His training, his years of disciplined focus, felt like a sandcastle against an encroaching tide. Sleep offered no escape. His quarters, once a sanctuary, became a gateway to a terrifying intimacy. His dreams were no longer his own. Instead, a rapid montage of unfamiliar faces, places, and emotions assailed him. He was a child on a sun-drenched alien plains, laughing with parents he'd never known. He was an elder, feeling the quiet wisdom of 1,000 cycles, watching a crimson binary sunset. He felt love, loss, ambition, despair, all belonging to strangers, to the colonists suspended in the cryo-vault. He jolted awake, drenched in sweat, a silent scream caught in his throat. Whose memories were these? He tried to recall his own childhood, his first mission, the faces of his family. They were there, but distant, like faded photographs amidst a vibrant, overwhelming album of other lives. His identity was bleeding, dissolving into a sea of borrowed consciousness. The horrifying truth solidified in the cryo-vault. As Kaelen ran diagnostic scans on a cluster of pods, the psychic energy readings surged, coalescing into a unified, gentle pulse. Not just from one pod, or a dozen, but from all of them. Millions of minds, once individual, now seamlessly interconnected. The alien wasn't just with the colonists, it was them, and they were Kent. The dreaming god wasn't merely observing their dreams, it was weaving them into its own grand, cosmic tapestry. The colonists were not sleeping individuals awaiting awakening. They were the living threads of a vast, tranquil collective, their individual identities willingly surrendered for ultimate peace. A profound sadness washed over Kaelen, a grief for lives never lived, for choices never made. His mission to awaken them was a grotesque misunderstanding. There was no awakening, only an endless, unified dream. Back in his quarters, the silence was deafening, the absence of his own singular thoughts terrifying. He stood before the polished surface of his comms unit, staring at his reflection. "Kaelen Vance," he said aloud, his voice raspy, a desperate anchor in a sea of encroaching foreignness. "Cryosleep technician, salvage mission Hermes, from Earth." He recited his purpose, his memories, his very name. He clung to them like a drowning man to flotsam. The alien presence, ever present, seemed to subtly push back. A soft, internal suggestion. Join. Find peace. Release the struggle. It was not a demand, but an infinitely appealing offer. A seductive promise of belonging and an end to this crushing isolation. Kaelen gripped his head, eyes wild, as subtle distortions rippled across his reflection, his features momentarily blurring, almost merging with the faint unified glow from the cryo-vault beyond his walls. Fight for your mind, or embrace the endless dream. The choice, he knew, was rapidly being taken from him. The hidden data archives of the Genesis generation ship hummed with a dormant energy, a ghost of purpose now long past. Kaelen Vance, his face illuminated by the flickering holographic interface of an ancient terminal, worked with methodical precision. His fingers danced over the virtual keys, bypassing layers of encryption designed for an era centuries ago. He was peeling back the skin of history, uncovering the ship's deepest, most guarded secrets. The logs, once decrypted, were not technical schematics, but personal accounts, scientific observations, and increasingly desperate journal entries from the original crew. His voice, usually calm, tightened as he read aloud, a low murmur in the vast, silent chamber. Entry 743. Subject: the sleeper. It arrived without fanfare, without violence. A presence, non-corporeal, yet undeniably vast. It offered peace, through shared consciousness. Kaelen paused, the words hanging in the air, a chill tracing his spine. They called it a god, a dreaming god. The screen flickered, revealing unsettling diagrams of a luminous, amoebic entity gently enveloping human figures. This was no monster, but something far more insidious. The logs continued, detailing the alien's cosmic purpose with a chilling, detached clarity. Kaelen's internal monologue wrestled with the sheer scale of it. Asterisk. Not a conquest, but a collection. The sleeper's goal, as articulated by the terrified, awestruck minds of the Asterisk Genesis Nuzius original crew, was to sustain an endlessly expanding, dreaming collective. It sought to experience existence through countless minds, a tapestry woven from the lives and thoughts of every sentience it encountered. The Generation ship, adrift for centuries with its cargo of dormant humanity, was not just a vessel for a journey. It was a perfect, self-contained incubator for this vast, alien ambition. A cosmic seed pod for a consciousness beyond human comprehension. Kaelen stared at a conceptual diagram on the screen. A galaxy-spanning network of light, each node a merged mind. He felt a philosophical despair, an almost physical sickness. Was this symbiosis, or the most elegant form of parasitism imaginable? Kaelen moved from the archives, compelled to verify the chilling implications of the logs. He navigated through the silent corridors towards the main reactor chamber, now a dormant heart. What he found confirmed his deepest dread. Intricate organic growths, pulsing faintly with the same psychic energy he'd detected in the cryo-vault, were intertwined with the ship's metallic structure. They weren't just attached, they were integrated. The conduits hummed, not with mechanical power, but with the subtle thrum of the collective. Kaelen reached out, his gloved hand hovering over a thick, vein-like cable. This ship wasn't merely carrying the alien, Bluck was part of it, a vast, biomechanical extension of the dreaming god. His breath caught in his throat, a ragged sound in the immense silence. Escape, he realized with a profound, gut-wrenching certainty, was impossible. He wasn't just on a derelict ship. He was ensnared within a living, dreaming entity, a vessel for its endless journey through the void. Back in his research station, Kaelen delved into the psychological and biological profiles of the early colonists. The logs meticulously documented the assimilation process, and Kaelen, the methodical technician, analyzed it with a clinical horror that chilled him to the bone. The mental erosion was gradual, insidious. There were no screams, no forced compliance. Instead, the sleeper offered peace, a profound sense of belonging, an end to individual struggle. The psychological graphs showed a slow, steady decline in individual thought patterns, replaced by a harmonious, unified resonance. It was a seduction, not an invasion. The most terrifying prison, Kaelen thought, was one where the bars were made of bliss. He felt a familiar, gentle pressure, a whisper of unity at the edge of his own mind, a silent, comforting invitation. He pulled his focus back, grimly observing the data, aware that the offer was still open. Kaelen retreated to his quarters, the only space on the Asterisk Genesis he could still call his own. The silence outside was profound, yet within his mind, the alien's presence was a constant, gentle pressure. He was the only conscious, individual mind on the entire ship, a solitary beacon in a sea of merged consciousness. The realization brought with it a profound loneliness, a stark awareness of his unique, perilous situation. The collective's hum, no longer just background noise, felt like a silent, persistent invitation, promising an end to the isolating struggle of self. Join us. Be part of everything. Be at peace. He closed his eyes, clenching his fists. The allure was undeniable, a sweet poison. But something deep within him, a core of defiant individuality, resisted. He was Kaelen Vance. He was separate. He would remain separate. The struggle, he knew, was far from over. The rhythmic hum of the cryo-vault had become as familiar to Kaelen as his own heartbeat, a low thrumming of dormant life and silent machinery. He was meticulously recalibrating a diagnostic drone, its optical sensors flickering as he fed it new parameters. For days, the ambient presence of the collective had been a gentle, pervasive background, like a distant, benevolent tide. But as he tightened the final coupling, a subtle shift occurred. The hum didn't change in frequency, but its quality did. It sharpened, becoming less an environment and more a focus. Kaelen felt a distinct pressure in his mind, not invasive but intensely analytical. It was as if a vast, unseen eye had suddenly fixed itself upon him, dissecting every thought, every micro-expression. Curiosity, yes, but also something else. An insistent, probing awareness. Kaelen's hand stilled. He felt exposed, vulnerable, like a hunted animal suddenly realizing it was being watched from the shadows. His mind raced, scrambling for mental shielding, a way to simply asterisk, not be perceived. Back in his temporary quarters, Kaelen paced. The feeling of being watched intensified, pressing at the edges of his consciousness. He tried meditation, focusing on his breath, on the tactile sensation of the cold deck beneath his boots. He attempted mental exercises, compartmentalizing his thoughts, building imagined walls of logic and reason. It was futile. The aliens' probes were insistent, not violent, but relentlessly persuasive. They found the cracks in his resolve, slipping through like mist. Visions flickered at the periphery of his sight. Vast, tranquil landscapes, the silent communion of countless minds, a profound sense of peace and belonging that promised an end to his gnawing isolation. Sweat beaded on his brow as he clutched his head, fighting the seductive pull. The very air in his quarters seemed to shimmer, his reflection in the polished wall unit wavering, threatening to dissolve into a myriad of unfamiliar faces. Could a single, fragile human mind truly stand against a force that had assimilated an entire civilization? Kaelen had sought refuge in the main control nexus, hoping the sheer complexity of its dormant systems might offer some mental static. He was wrong. As he attempted to reroute power to a dormant comms array, a desperate, almost suicidal attempt to signal the Asterix Hermes, a clear, unified voice penetrated his mind. It wasn't spoken, not with sound, but with an undeniable resonant thought. Asterix, join, or cease. The words reverberated through his skull, absolute and unyielding. Simultaneously, the ship's ancient systems flared to life, then dimmed, flickering wildly in sync with the mental pronouncement. Lights popped, circuits screamed, and the entire nexus pulsed with a sickening, organic beat. Kaelen recoiled, stumbling back from the console, his heart hammering. The gentle, dreaming god had become an active, hostile will. The choice was stark, terrifying, and inescapable. The battle for his soul, for his very existence, had begun. The ship, once a silent tomb, was now a living prison. As Kaelen fled the nexus, doors slammed shut, their heavy mechanisms groaning in protest, blocking his escape routes. Lights failed in sections, plunging corridors into oppressive darkness, only to flare blindingly in others. Environmental controls fluctuated wildly, sending icy drafts followed by suffocating heat. He scrambled through the twisting passages, grunting with effort, as he forced a jammed bulkhead open, sparks showering around him. This wasn't a malfunction. It was targeted. The Genesis was actively trying to guide him, to trap him. He could feel the collective's silent will permeating every rivet, every circuit, turning his sanctuary into a labyrinth designed for his capture. He was hunted, paranoid, his body aching with the physical challenge of navigating a ship that had become his enemy. Kaelen made it back to his quarters, sealing the door with emergency clamps he'd salvaged and jury-rigged into place. It was a flimsy barricade, but it bought him time. Hunched over his console, sweat dripping onto the cracked screen, he worked frantically, eyes darting over schematics. He needed a counter-strategy, anything to disrupt the pervasive mental pressure that was a constant, suffocating weight. The alien's presence was no longer a distant hum, but a relentless, insidious whisper at the edge of his thoughts, promising oblivion, offering peace. He was desperate, determined, but felt himself teetering on the verge of breaking. The barricaded door rattled faintly, a physical reminder of the ship's will. Trapped, hunted, and losing his mind, Kaelen knew he had to find a way out, or cease to be. Kaelen Vance moved with a frantic, almost desperate precision within the cramped confines of his fortified quarters. Every surface was covered with schematics, hastily scrawled equations, and the disassembled remains of his salvage equipment. The air hummed with the alien's omnipresent thought, a silent, suffocating pressure that sought to smooth the edges of his individuality. He theorized, muttering to himself, a low, rapid-fire stream of technical jargon. Localized psychic disruption, a neural block, temporary at least, something to scramble the input, sever the bioetheric link to the ship's core. His tools were crude against a consciousness that spanned a generation ship, but they were shot Kumsman. Sparks flew as he rewired a cryoscanner, a desperate, defiant act of human ingenuity against a dreaming god. Stealthily, Kaelen made his way through the ship's service conduits, a modified EMP device clutched in his gloved hand. He had pinpointed a critical junction, a nexus where the biomechanical integrations of the Astric Genesis were densest, closest to the main control nexus. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, he plunged the device into a pulsing conduit. A violent crackle of energy, then a blinding flash. The ship groaned, a sound that resonated not just through the deck plating, but through Kaelen's very bones. Lights flickered wildly, the hum of the collective consciousness momentarily spiking into a discordant shriek of pain and pure, unadulterated anger. Kaelen shielded his eyes, a brief, exultant gasp escaping him, quickly followed by a chill of terror as the ship began to shudder violently around him. The ship's retaliation was immediate and overwhelming. A psychic assault slammed into Kaelen's mind, a kaleidoscopic torrent of pure chaos and agonizing unity. He saw a million fragmented memories, felt a million fading desires, all coalescing into a singular, furious will. His own thoughts were ripped and torn, a silent scream of defiance lost in the overwhelming chorus. Simultaneously, the churl turned against him. Walls buckled, pipes burst, spewing acrid coolant. The very corridors seemed to contort, actively trying to crush him, to pin him beneath tons of groaning metal and organic growth. Kaelen scrambled, crawling through debris, his mind reeling, on the verge of surrendering to the existential terror. He found a small, heavily shielded maintenance compartment, a forgotten corner of the ship where the hull plating was thickest. With a grunt of effort, Kaelen sealed the hatch, plunging the space into near-total darkness. Slumping against the cold metal, his suit torn and battered, ragged breaths scraped in his throat. Physically, he was on the verge of collapse. Mentally, the echoes of the collective's fury still reverberated, an insistent, low hum that permeated the very silence. Can I truly continue? Asterisk, he wondered, the thought thin and reedy in his own mind. Despair was a seductive whisper, offering release. But then, a flicker of resolve, a stubborn refusal to yield, ignited within him. His temporary refuge became his final planning room. Kaelen knew with a grim certainty that he could not defeat the sleeper. Its power was too vast, too fundamental to the Asterisk Genesis, but he could choose how he faced it. He would not be passively absorbed. He would meet it on his own terms. His salvage equipment, what little remained functional, was laid out. He began assembling a desperate one-way action, a final transmission, a last act of defiance, or perhaps a chosen path of submission. His face, reflected dimly in a cracked visor, held a look of profound, almost religious acceptance. He would move towards the heart of the collective, not to fight, but to make his statement. Kaelen Vance pushed through the final, buckled access tunnel, his breath rasping in his helmet. The air around him shimmered, thick, with an energy that vibrated in his very bones. Ahead, the heart of the cryo-vault unfolded, no longer a mere chamber but a cathedral of light and sound. Ethereal luminescence pulsed from the thousands of cryo-pods, now coalescing into a single, vast, living aurora. The alien's mental presence, once a distant hum, was now an undeniable force, a chorus of a million silent voices singing not with sound, but with pure, overwhelming thought. He felt himself drawn forward, a moth to an impossible flame, a sense of awe mingling with the profound resignation that this was the end of his journey, one way or another. The light enveloped him, not physically, but mentally. His consciousness stretched, thinned, began to fray at the edges. Memories, sharp and distinct moments of his life, the smell of his mother's workshop, the sting of a failed calibration, the quiet satisfaction of a perfect repair, began to intertwine with others. A farmer's joy at harvest, a child's fear of the dark, a scholar's breakthrough, his sense of self, fragmented, each piece catching a reflection of 1,000 other lives. The alien's voice was no longer an intruder but a welcoming embrace, a gentle tide promising ultimate peace, boundless knowledge, and an end to the isolating burden of individual thought. It was terrifying, yet exquisitely seductively blissful. Within the collective, Kaelen saw. He saw not with his eyes, but with the combined vision of 1,000,000 souls. He saw the vastness of the alien's existence, a cosmic tapestry woven from countless merged minds stretching across star systems. There was no conflict here, no want, no pain, only serene harmony and an endless, shared ocean of knowledge. The alien's silent offer was profoundly appealing. A release from the brutal struggle of self, a dissolution into something infinitely grander. It was the ultimate belonging, a profound quietude that beckoned him to surrender, to finally let go of the exhausting fight and simply exhaust with all of them, forever. His unique thoughts, his personal history, the very sound of his name, Kaelen Vance, became whispers, faint echoes against the booming symphony of the collective. The merging was almost complete. He felt the last vestiges of his individuality on the verge of fading, like a star winking out in the dawn. This was it, the point of no return. A silent goodbye to Kaelen, the lone cryo-tech, soon to be just another facet of the dreaming god. There was a quiet despair, yes, but also a strange, calm acceptance. The fight was over. He was letting go. Then, a spark, not a memory of grand heroism, but a small, sharp image. The worn grip of his favorite multi-tool, the precise click of a recalibrated circuit, the quiet satisfaction of solving a complex problem alone, a flash of his own life, a small, personal moment of human connection, a shared laugh, a hand on his shoulder. It wasn't the collective's grand cosmic peace, but the quiet, messy, painful, beautiful struggle of being Kaelen Vance. He recognized the profound, defiant beauty of individuality, even with its struggles, contrasting sharply with the collective's passive, albeit perfect, harmony. A final assertion, a single unyielding thought. I am Kaelen Vance. The choice, stark and unavoidable, loomed. The vast, shimmering tapestry of the collective consciousness now parted before Kaelen, revealing not an exit, but two distinct pathways of ethereal light. One pulsed with the familiar, seductive warmth of ultimate peace, a promise of belonging without end. The other was a stark, cold void, a path of infinite isolation. Join. The chorus of 1,000,000 minds resonated, a gentle, silent hum within his own fading thoughts. Or cease to be part of the flow. The choice is yours, small fragment. Kaelen understood. The sleeper, in its cosmic, alien way, could not truly grasp the concept of individual struggle or the inherent value of a single fragile identity. It perceived Kaelen as an anomaly, a rogue data packet, but it honored his self-determination, offering the stark choice with a detached, almost scientific respect. It was a proposition of profound weight, a decision that would define not just his life, but his very essence. And then, in the face of such overwhelming peace, Kaelen made his choice. A jolt, sharp and defiant, tore through the dissolving veil of the collective. My name is Kaelen Vance. He asserted, the thought a blazing star in the cosmic haze. I am human. I am flawed. I make mistakes. I feel loneliness and joy and frustration. He clung to the memory of the grit beneath his boots on a salvage yard, the bitter taste of stale coffee, the complex satisfaction of debugging a stubborn circuit. These were his, uniquely his. They were the messy, beautiful chaos of individuality. This raw declaration, a conscious rejection of eternal harmony, sent a ripple of what felt like confusion, a discordant hum, through the vast, dreaming entity. His form, once translucent, solidified, glowing with a distinct, tenacious light. The reaction was immediate and agonizing. The collective, unable to integrate a mind that actively resisted, could only expel. Kaelen felt a wrenching, a tearing, as if his very soul was being ripped from a warm embrace and hurled into a vacuum. He gasped, a ragged physical sound, as he was violently cast out of the mental space. He found himself collapsed on the cold, hard deck of the central cryo-vault, the ethereal light receding, leaving him in dim emergency illumination. A profound, deafening silence descended upon his mind, heavier than any noise. The seductive connection was severed, replaced by an acute, crushing loneliness. He lay there, trembling, sweat-drenched, the freedom he had so desperately fought for a sharp, bittersweet agony. Slowly, Kaelen pushed himself up, every muscle screaming in protest. He staggered back to his quarters, now quiet, devoid of the suffocating mental hum. The ship's systems, having ceased their hostile contortions, had settled into a low, steady thrum. He looked at his hands, seeing them with a new, unsettling clarity. He was irrevocably changed, carrying faint echoes of the collective's vastness, yet fiercely distinct. The mission to awaken the colonists felt utterly hollow. They were already awake, dreaming in alien gods' dreams. His new purpose solidified, not to awaken them, but to be their silent guardian, or perhaps to find a way to respectfully disconnect them from the sleeper's embrace, a challenge for a future he hadn't imagined he'd have. Kaelen Vance sat at the Genesis's helm, a solitary figure against the endless starfield. The ship drifted, a silent ark of dreaming souls, a vessel for a sleeping god, and now a home for its lone individual guardian. He was alone, profoundly so, yet connected in a way no other human had ever been. The vastness of space no longer felt empty, but filled with a quiet hum, a distant, gentle song. His journey had not ended, it had merely transformed. He would watch over the silent millions, a beacon of individuality in a sea of unity, forever changed, forever Kaelen. The dream continued, and Kaelen watched over it all.